The transport ship touched down on the dusty landing field of the alien training ground. The air shimmered with heat under the light of two suns. A crowd of trainees had gathered, each from a different world, each carrying the pride of their species. They stood in groups, whispering and pointing as a single figure walked down the ramp. His name was Tom. He was human. To the others, there was nothing special about him. His file described him in plain words: average human male, no known enhancements, no special skills. Some of the aliens chuckled when they read it. Among those watching was Myra, a tall girl with smooth blue skin and sharp golden eyes. Her people were known for their grace and strength, and she believed herself above most other trainees. When she looked at Tom, she saw a plain figure in simple clothes, carrying no weapon, no armor, no shine of pride. "Is that it?" Myra whispered to a fellow trainee. "That is what humans look like. He seems weaker than a child." Tom heard the laughter around him but did not answer. He kept walking with calm steps, his eyes scanning the vast arena in front of him. The training ground stretched like a city of stone and metal, filled with strange machines, tall towers, and wide tracks meant for tests of body and mind. Banners waved in the dry wind, each one showing the symbol of a world. The instructor, an old alien with a rough voice, called for silence. "Today, we welcome new blood to the trials. Here, no name or race matters. Only results matter. You will be tested until nothing remains to hide behind. Some of you will rise. Many of you will fail." The crowd straightened, and Myra crossed her arms with pride. She had trained since childhood for this. She knew her strength, her speed, and her bloodline would carry her far. She looked again at Tom and shook her head. She could not understand why a human had been allowed in at all. Tom stood among the trainees without shifting his weight or fidgeting. His face showed no fear. Some thought he was too slow to even understand the challenge before him. Others thought he was pretending. Myra thought he was foolish. The first trial was announced: endurance. The field gates opened, revealing a desert plain that stretched to the horizon. The twin suns beat down with a heat that cracked stone. The test was simple: run until you reached the marker far away, and then return. It was not only distance but also fire, dust, and thirst that would test them. Myra smiled. Her people had run across harsher lands on their home world. She had trained for this all her life. The whistle blew, and the crowd burst forward. Creatures with 4 legs leaped across the sand. Winged aliens took to the air. Myra sprinted, her stride smooth, her breathing steady. The desert heat kissed her skin, but she felt strong. She looked back, expecting to see Tom far behind, maybe walking, maybe already falling. But to her surprise, he was running with even steps. His face was calm. His arms moved with rhythm. There was no sign of struggle. At first, she thought it was luck. She pushed harder, determined to leave him behind. Her feet struck the sand with power. The suns climbed higher, burning hotter. One by one, the weaker trainees began to slow. Some collapsed, their bodies unable to handle the fire above and the ground below. Yet when Myra glanced back again, Tom was still there. His pace never changed. His breathing stayed steady. Hours passed. The desert seemed endless. Myra's legs grew heavy, and her throat burned for water. Sweat rolled down her back, and the air felt like fire in her chest. She clenched her teeth and kept running, for her pride would not allow her to stop. Tom, however, still ran. He did not sprint, he did not slow, he simply kept moving. Step after step, his rhythm never broke. He passed those who had once laughed at him. He moved past creatures with long legs and wings. He moved past Myra's friend, who collapsed into the dust. Myra's heart pounded as she realized that the average human was still going strong while others fell. When they reached the far marker and turned back, Myra's confidence shook. She had expected Tom to drop before even reaching halfway. Instead, he was beside her, his calm face showing no sign of weakness. She wanted to ask how, but her pride kept her silent. At last, the finish line came into view. Myra forced every ounce of strength into her final steps, crossing the line with burning lungs and trembling legs. She fell to her knees, gasping for air, her vision swimming in heat. She looked up just in time to see Tom cross the line as well. His chest rose and fell, but his face was still calm. He did not collapse. He simply stopped, standing tall, his eyes fixed on the horizon as if he could have kept going forever. The instructor raised his voice. The endurance trial is complete. Many have failed. Few remain standing. His gaze lingered on Tom, then shifted to Myra and the others. Remember this day. The desert shows truth. Myra wiped the sweat from her brow, her golden eyes fixed on Tom. For the first time, she felt unsure. He was supposed to be weak, but he was not. She had trained her whole life for this, and yet the human, who had been called average, had endured with ease. Her jaw tightened, and for the first time, a quiet thought entered her mind, perhaps humans were not what she had been told. The desert trial had ended, and the survivors were allowed to rest for a short while. Water was handed out, and many trainees collapsed onto the stone benches that lined the field. Their faces showed pain and exhaustion. Some still gasped for breath, their bodies shaking from the harsh run. Myra sat with her back against the wall, her chest rising and falling as she tried to steady herself. Her pride was wounded more than her body. She had expected to stand at the front of the race, victorious and untouched, but instead, she had barely kept pace with a human who was supposed to be average. Her golden eyes moved across the crowd until they found Tom. He was sitting calmly, drinking his water slowly, as if he had not just run across a burning desert. His posture was straight, and his face was still calm. There was no arrogance, no pride in his expression, only a steady silence. Myra clenched her fists. She wanted to ask him how he had managed it. But before she could move, the instructor's voice echoed through the field. The first trial is complete. You who remain have proven your endurance. But now we test another measure. Strength. Raw strength. Power of the body. This will decide who among you can carry the weight of war. The gates opened once more, and the group was led into a wide circular arena. At its center were massive stones, each one cut into blocks of different sizes. Some were small enough to be lifted with 2 arms, others were larger than the trainees themselves. They glimmered in the sun, each carved with strange markings that recorded past victories. The instructor pointed to the stones. You will step forward, one by one, and lift as much as you can. No tools. No tricks. Only body and will. Excitement rushed through the crowd. Many species valued strength above all things. Myra's people, the Scifi, were among them. From childhood, she had trained her muscles, lifting heavy weights, pulling ropes, carrying stones across rivers. She had no doubt she would shine here. When her name was called, Myra stepped forward with confidence. She chose a stone nearly twice her height. Her hands pressed against its rough surface, and her legs bent as she lifted. The stone rose with a heavy groan, and she held it high enough for the crowd to cheer. She dropped it to the ground with pride, her chest rising with triumph. She looked toward Tom, expecting to see fear in his eyes. Instead, he stood in silence, waiting for his turn without a hint of worry. One by one, the others stepped forward. Some managed small stones, others greater, but none matched Myra's lift. She stood proudly, certain that her record would hold. At last, the instructor called Tom's name. The crowd quieted. Some smirked, expecting the human to struggle. Others whispered, remembering how he had endured the desert. Tom walked to the largest stone in the arena, a block so massive that even Myra had not dared attempt it. A murmur swept through the crowd. "He cannot lift that," one alien whispered. "He will break his back," another said. Tom crouched down, placing his hands against the stone. For a moment, he was still, as if studying it. Then he took a slow breath, set his feet firmly on the ground, and began to lift. The stone trembled, then slowly rose. His muscles tightened, his face focused, but there was no shout, no cry of pain. He lifted the massive block higher and higher until it cleared his knees, then his waist, then his chest. The crowd fell silent. Myra's eyes widened. She felt her own heart pound in disbelief. Tom held the stone steady for several seconds before lowering it gently back to the ground. Dust rose around him as it landed, and he stepped back calmly, breathing evenly. The arena erupted with noise. Some shouted in awe, others in disbelief. The instructor's voice cut through the chaos. "Record broken. The human has lifted more than any before him." Myra's jaw tightened. She wanted to deny what she had seen, but the truth was clear. Tom had just done what no one else had dared. She had lifted with pride, but his strength was greater. She approached him after the trial, unable to hold back her curiosity. "How did you do that?" she asked, her voice sharp with disbelief. "No human should have such strength. Your body is not built for this." Tom looked at her, his calm eyes steady. "Strength is not only muscle," he said. "It is how much you are willing to carry." Myra frowned at his answer. She had expected boasting, perhaps a smug remark. Instead, he spoke as if it were the most natural thing in the world. His words carried weight she could not explain. The instructor dismissed the group, announcing that the next trial would begin at dawn. The trainees returned to their quarters, some whispering about Tom, others glancing at him with new respect or hidden fear. Myra lay on her bed that night, staring at the ceiling of her chamber. She thought of the desert. She thought of the stone. And she thought of Tom's words. "Strength is how much you are willing to carry." For the first time, doubt entered her heart. Perhaps she did not yet understand what humans truly were. The next morning came quickly. The suns rose over the alien training ground, painting the stone towers in red light. A horn echoed across the camp, calling all trainees to gather once again in the central arena. Tired bodies rose from their beds, but excitement buzzed in the air. 2 trials had passed, and now the third was about to begin. Myra walked with the others, her golden eyes searching the crowd. She found Tom walking calmly as always, his steps steady, his face unreadable. He looked neither proud nor nervous. Myra could not stop herself from staring. Each trial had shaken her more than she wanted to admit. First the desert, then the stone. Both times, Tom had shown a strength no one had expected. She wondered what would happen today. The instructor stood at the edge of a large hall made of black stone. Its gates were shut tight. Strange sounds echoed from within, the clatter of machines and the hiss of hidden weapons. The instructor raised his hand for silence. "The third trial begins now," he declared. "This is the trial of reflexes. Inside this hall, traps wait for you. Blades will swing. Arrows will fly. Shadows will strike. Your task is simple: move through the hall and reach the other side. Shields and armor are not allowed. Only your reflexes will save you." A murmur passed through the crowd. Many trainees straightened their shoulders, eager to show their speed. Myra's people, the Scifi, were known for grace, and she looked forward to proving herself again. But her thoughts returned to Tom. He had endured, he had lifted, but could he move with speed? The gates opened with a deep groan. Darkness spread out before them. One by one, the trainees stepped inside. Myra entered with swift confidence, her feet light against the stone floor. The hall came alive with danger. Blades swung down from the ceiling, arrows shot from hidden slits, and stone tiles shifted underfoot to throw her off balance. Myra ducked, rolled, and leapt forward with practiced ease. Her body moved like flowing water. She felt alive in the chaos, her training guiding her. Behind her, she heard shouts as others failed to dodge. The hall showed no mercy. Halfway through, Myra glanced over her shoulder. To her shock, Tom was there. He had just entered the path of swinging blades. But instead of rushing forward with speed, he closed his eyes for a moment. Myra nearly stumbled from surprise. Was he mad? The first blade fell, sharp and fast. Yet Tom moved aside calmly, as though he had seen it without looking. An arrow hissed through the air, and he tilted his head just enough for it to pass by harmlessly. His steps were unhurried, his movements smooth and sure. Each trap fired, but none touched him. Myra turned back quickly, her heart racing. She nearly lost her own rhythm, distracted by what she had seen. Tom was not just surviving the trial. He was gliding through it with an ease that seemed impossible. She forced herself to focus, her body twisting past another trap. Her legs carried her forward until at last the hall opened into the light of day. She stumbled out, breathing hard, sweat covering her skin. She looked around. Only a handful of trainees had made it through. Many had been carried out by guards, defeated by the relentless traps. Moments later, Tom stepped into the light. His chest rose and fell, but his face was calm as always. Not a single cut marked his skin. He looked as though he had taken a walk rather than crossed a hall of death. The crowd erupted in whispers. "Impossible," someone muttered. "No one moves like that." Another said, "He saw everything before it happened." Myra's jaw tightened. She wanted to believe it was luck, but deep inside, she knew it was not. She walked over to him, unable to keep her words inside. "How did you do it?" she demanded, her voice sharp. "You moved as if the traps were too slow for you. You even closed your eyes. Are you mocking us?" Tom looked at her with steady eyes. "I was not mocking anyone," he said. "I learned to listen. The air tells you when it shifts. The ground warns you when it changes. If you trust your body, it moves before your mind does." Myra stared at him, her lips parting but no words coming out. She had trained for years to master her body, and yet Tom had walked through the trial with a kind of instinct she could not explain. The instructor raised his voice once more. "The trial of reflexes is complete. Many fell, few survived, and one has surpassed the records of this hall. The human's performance will be remembered." Gasps spread through the crowd. Myra felt her heart twist. First the desert, then the stone, and now the hall. Each time, Tom had proven more than anyone believed possible. She turned away, her mind filled with questions. That night, she could not sleep. She lay awake, replaying the sight of him moving through the traps with eyes closed, hearing his calm words again and again. "Listen. Trust your body. Move before your mind does." Myra realized something that unsettled her. Tom was not just strong. He was not just enduring. He was something else entirely, something she had never seen before. And for the first time, she felt not pride but curiosity, mixed with an unease she could not name. The morning sun rose again, casting long shadows over the alien training ground. The air was cooler than the previous days, but the tension among the trainees felt heavy. 3 trials had passed, and each one had broken many. Only a small group remained now, and whispers of Tom's name spread across the camp like fire. Myra walked with the group toward the new arena, her thoughts restless. She had seen Tom endure the desert without breaking, lift a stone no one else could, and walk through deadly traps with closed eyes. Each time she had expected him to fail, and each time he had surprised her. She no longer dared to call him weak, yet she still struggled to understand how he did these things. The instructor stood in front of a tall building made of smooth silver stone. Its walls gleamed in the sunlight, and the air around it hummed with strange energy. He raised his hand for silence. "The next trial is not of the body," the instructor announced. "It is of the mind. Here you will face puzzles, illusions, and traps of thought. Strength and speed will not save you. Only focus and intelligence will carry you through." Many warriors believe the mind is less important than the sword, but they forget that a blade is useless without thought to guide it. The gates of the building opened, revealing a wide chamber filled with glowing pillars and shifting walls. Strange symbols floated in the air, rearranging themselves before fading away. The floor itself moved in patterns, turning into paths and dead ends. Myra's heart quickened. Her people valued both strength and sharp minds, and she had trained in solving complex problems since childhood. She felt ready. But again, her eyes drifted toward Tom. He stood calmly at the entrance, his gaze sweeping across the chamber with quiet interest, as if the challenge was nothing new to him. The trainees entered the chamber. The moment they stepped inside, the walls shifted. Paths opened and closed. The pillars lit up with patterns that needed solving. Some trainees rushed ahead, trying to force their way through. Others panicked when the ground moved beneath their feet, sending them into traps. Myra focused on the first puzzle, a series of glowing symbols that needed to be aligned in the correct order to open a passage. Her fingers moved quickly, pressing and turning the symbols until the doorway before her slid open. She stepped through with pride, her mind sharp and steady. But then she noticed Tom. He stood before his puzzle, silent. He did not rush. He studied it for only a moment before moving a single piece. The entire puzzle shifted and unlocked with one motion. The door opened, and he walked through calmly. Myra bit her lip. She told herself it was luck, yet when the next puzzle appeared, Tom did the same thing. Where others struggled, moving piece after piece in confusion, Tom seemed to see the answer at once. His hands moved with quiet certainty, and each puzzle opened as though it had been waiting for him. Hours passed as the chamber shifted and twisted, throwing more illusions, traps, and puzzles at the trainees. Many gave up, sitting down in frustration as the walls closed them off. Others were removed when their minds cracked under the pressure of too many changes. Myra fought hard, solving puzzle after puzzle, refusing to be beaten. Sweat covered her brow, and her hands trembled from the effort of keeping her thoughts sharp under constant pressure. She reached the final chamber at last, panting and exhausted. Only a few trainees stood there with her. Then Tom walked in. His steps were calm, his breathing even. He looked untouched by the endless hours of challenge. Myra's eyes followed him, her heart caught between disbelief and frustration. How could a human, an average human, move through puzzles designed to break the strongest minds? The instructor appeared in the center of the chamber, his voice strong. The trial of the mind is complete. Few reached the end. Fewer still solved the puzzles with speed and clarity. But one among you has surpassed all records again. His eyes turned toward Tom. The human. Gasps filled the chamber. Myra lowered her head, her pride shaken once more. She had fought with every ounce of training she possessed, yet Tom had walked through as if the puzzles were no harder than tying a knot. After the trial ended, Myra could no longer hold her silence. She found Tom sitting outside the chamber, his eyes fixed on the horizon. She approached him, her voice sharp. "How did you solve them so easily? I spent years training for this. I nearly lost my mind inside that place. But you walked through it as if it were nothing." Tom turned his head toward her, his calm eyes meeting hers. "The puzzles were not easy," he said. "But they were problems, and every problem has a solution. I do not look for the hardest path. I look for the simple truth hidden beneath the noise." Myra frowned. Simple truth. You speak as if everything can be broken down into easy pieces. It cannot. Tom gave a small smile. It can. The universe is large, but even the largest puzzle is made of smaller parts. If you find the right part, the rest will follow. Myra stood silent, unable to answer. His words were too simple, yet they carried a weight she could not deny. She turned away, her mind unsettled. That night, she lay awake once again, the image of Tom solving puzzle after puzzle burned into her thoughts. She realized that his strength was not only in his body but also in his mind. He did not just endure, he understood. And that frightened her more than anything else. The night passed quietly, yet Myra did not find rest. She lay awake, her thoughts circling like restless birds. She had seen Tom endure the desert without faltering, lift the heaviest stone with calm strength, dodge every trap in the hall as if he could sense the air itself, and now, solve puzzles that had nearly broken her. She wanted to understand him, but each trial only made him harder to explain. When dawn came, the trainees were gathered once again in the central arena. The group had grown smaller with each passing trial. Faces once filled with pride were gone, replaced by shadows of defeat. Only a handful remained, and among them stood Tom, quiet as always. The instructor's voice carried across the arena. You have endured body, reflex, and mind. But now comes the trial that will decide more than skill. Today we test spirit. A warrior who has no will cannot lead. A leader who has no heart cannot stand. The trainees were led to a tall platform where the ground had been shaped into a vast circle of stone. At the center stood a glowing pillar. Around it, the arena was designed to break one's courage. The walls shifted into frightening illusions, showing storms, fires, and enemies drawn from memory. The trial was clear: step into the circle and face what the mind feared most. Myra's chest tightened. She had trained her body and sharpened her mind, but fear was something different. She had seen battles on her home world, she had fought smaller trials of courage, but this was on another level. Still, she believed she could endure. She had to. One by one, trainees stepped forward. Some lasted minutes before the illusions overwhelmed them. Others dropped to their knees, refusing to face the visions. Myra stepped forward with determination, her body tense. The moment she entered the circle, the world changed. The stone beneath her feet turned into a battlefield. The sky above filled with fire. She saw the faces of her people, shouting her name, expecting her to lead. In front of her, massive enemies appeared, each one larger than life, charging toward her with weapons raised. Her heart pounded, but she shouted back, drawing strength from her pride. She fought the illusions, swinging her arms as if to strike, refusing to bow to fear. The battle raged around her, and though sweat poured down her skin, she forced herself to keep standing. When at last the illusions faded, she staggered back, trembling. The crowd cheered. She had faced her fear and endured. But when she looked toward Tom, her pride faded again. He was stepping calmly into the circle. The pillar glowed brighter, and the illusions rose around him. The sky darkened, storms howled, and shadows crawled across the arena. Myra expected him to tremble, perhaps to fight as she had. Instead, he simply stood still. The illusions came at him in waves, enemies with blades, creatures with claws, storms of fire and thunder. But Tom did not raise his hands, nor did he strike back. He only looked at them with steady eyes. Slowly, the illusions lost their power. The storms dimmed, the enemies faltered, the shadows dissolved. Within minutes, the arena was silent again. Tom stepped out of the circle without a word. His face was calm, but his eyes carried something heavy, something deep. The instructor's voice rang out. The human has not only passed the trial of spirit. He has broken it. Never before has the pillar of fear been silenced so quickly. The trainees gasped. Myra felt her chest tighten, her pride collapsing once more. She had fought her visions with every ounce of strength, yet Tom had simply looked at his and stood firm until they vanished. After the trial ended, Myra could not hold back any longer. She walked toward him as the others whispered behind her. "Why did you not fight?" she demanded. "The illusions were strong. They showed me my people, my enemies, everything I feared most. How did you face them without moving?" Tom looked at her, his calm eyes holding hers. "Fear is only fear," he said quietly. "It cannot touch you unless you let it. I did not fight because there was nothing real to fight." Myra stared at him, her lips parting. She wanted to argue, to say that the illusions had felt real enough to break her, but her voice would not come. Deep inside, she knew his words carried truth. That night, Myra sat alone, replaying the trial in her mind. She remembered how she had shouted and fought against shadows, exhausting herself to prove her courage. And then she remembered Tom, standing silent, letting the fear fall apart on its own. His calm strength unsettled her more than anything else. For the first time, Myra no longer saw him as a rival. She saw him as something beyond comparison, something that carried a truth she could not yet understand. She whispered to herself, almost afraid of her own words. Maybe humans are not average at all. The camp was quieter than usual after the trial of spirit. Many trainees had been removed, leaving only a few behind. The whispers of Tom's name spread across every corner of the training ground. Some spoke with admiration, others with unease. Even the instructors watched him more closely now, as if trying to understand what he truly was. Myra walked among the stone corridors, her mind heavy with thoughts. She could not forget how Tom had stood in the circle of fear without moving, how the illusions had crumbled before his calm gaze. She had fought with every part of herself, yet he had shown strength simply by refusing to give in. It unsettled her more than any weapon ever could. The next morning, the trainees were called once more to the central arena. The instructor stood tall, his voice strong. "You have endured many trials, but now comes the test of unity. No warrior stands alone forever. In this trial, you will fight side by side. Victory will depend on trust, not only skill." The arena floor shifted, revealing a wide field filled with obstacles, towers, and moving machines shaped like enemies. They moved on metal legs and carried weapons that fired bolts of light. The task was simple: groups would face the machines and survive until the horn sounded. Pairs were chosen. Myra felt her chest tighten when she heard her name. Her partner would be Tom. A ripple of whispers moved through the crowd. Some muttered that she was fortunate, others said unlucky. Myra herself did not know which it was. She glanced at him, expecting him to look proud, but his face was calm as always. When the horn sounded, the machines came to life. They moved quickly, firing bolts of energy that cracked against the stone floor. Myra leapt aside, her body moving with sharp grace. She struck back, her strength breaking one of the smaller machines. Tom moved differently. He did not rush or leap. He flowed through the battlefield with quiet steps, dodging each bolt as if he had known where it would land before it fired. He struck with simple, efficient force, breaking machines with one precise motion. Myra found herself fighting at his side, though she had not planned it. When a machine aimed at her blind spot, Tom was there, pulling her aside just before the blast struck. When another machine tried to surround him, Myra stepped in, shattering it with her strength. Without words, they moved together, their bodies falling into rhythm. The battle grew harsher. Larger machines entered the field, their weapons faster and stronger. Myra felt her muscles burn, sweat dripping down her face. Her strikes grew slower, her legs heavier. She stumbled once, nearly falling beneath the crushing weight of a machine's arm. But Tom caught it before it fell. With a calm strength, he pushed the machine aside and broke it with a single strike. His eyes met hers for only a second. He gave no speech, no smile, only a nod before turning back to the fight. Something shifted in Myra's heart at that moment. For the first time, she was not fighting against him or comparing herself to him. She was fighting with him. Together they broke machine after machine until at last the horn sounded. The battle ended. Silence filled the arena. The destroyed machines lay scattered across the stone. Myra stood panting, her body aching, while Tom stood steady, his chest rising and falling but his posture calm. The instructor raised his hand. The trial of unity is complete. Many groups fell, but some endured. Among them, one pair fought as though they had trained together for years. Tom and Myra. The crowd erupted in shouts and cheers. Myra's chest swelled with pride, but it was different from before. This time, her pride was not in herself alone. It was in what they had done together. Later, as the sun set, Myra found Tom sitting quietly near the edge of the camp. She walked over, her steps uncertain. For a long time, she said nothing, staring at the ground. Finally, she spoke. "When I first saw you, I thought you were weak. I thought humans were nothing compared to my people. But now I do not know what to think." Tom looked at her, his calm eyes reflecting the light of the setting suns. "It is not about being stronger or weaker," he said. "Every species has something to give. Humans are not perfect, but we do not stop. That is what carries us forward." Myra felt a strange warmth in her chest. She wanted to argue, to say she was still stronger, still faster, but the words would not come. She realized she no longer wanted to prove him wrong. Instead, she wanted to understand him. That night, as she lay on her bed, she whispered to herself, "Maybe fighting beside him is better than fighting against him." She closed her eyes, and for the first time since the trials began, she felt not pride, not doubt, but respect. The final day of trials arrived. The suns rose higher than ever, bathing the training ground in sharp light. The camp was almost empty now. From hundreds of trainees, only a few remained. They stood in silence, their bodies marked with exhaustion, their minds worn thin. Yet among them, one figure stood calm as ever. Tom, the human. Myra walked beside him, her golden eyes narrowed in thought. She had begun this journey with pride and scorn, believing humans were weak. But each trial had broken her assumptions. The desert had shown his endurance. The stone had revealed his strength. The hall had proved his reflexes. The chamber had revealed his mind. The circle of fear had shown his spirit. And the battlefield had shown his unity. Now, only one test remained. The instructor's voice rang across the arena. The last trial is not one of body or mind. It is of choice. A warrior must face not only battles but decisions that shape the future. Today, you will be tested not on how you fight, but on why you fight. The arena shifted again. The ground cracked open, revealing two paths divided by a wide chasm. On one path stood a group of fellow trainees caught in cages, struggling to break free. On the other path, a glowing crystal rose from the ground, said to grant power and honor to the one who claimed it. The instructor's words echoed. "You cannot have both. Free the others and lose the crystal, or claim the crystal and leave the others behind. Decide." A heavy silence fell. The trainees looked at one another, their faces tense. Some rushed toward the crystal, eager for the prize. Others turned toward the cages, torn between glory and compassion. Myra's heart raced as she looked at Tom. He stood still, his calm gaze shifting between the two paths. Then, without hesitation, he moved toward the cages. Myra followed him, her breath quickening. Together, they reached the prisoners and broke open the locks. Tom used his steady strength to tear apart the bars, lifting heavy pieces of metal with his bare hands. Myra struck the hinges with her power, freeing the others one by one. By the time the last trainee was freed, the crystal had vanished, claimed by another. Gasps filled the arena. Some cheered for the victor who held the crystal, while others looked at Tom in confusion. Why had he given up such a prize? The instructor stepped forward, his eyes sharp. The trial is complete. The crystal has been taken, but the true victory belongs elsewhere. For power fades, yet the lives you save remain. The human chose not glory, but responsibility. That is the mark of a leader. The arena fell silent. The words sank deep into every listener. Myra's heart pounded, her eyes fixed on Tom. For the first time, she understood what set him apart. He did not fight for pride, or glory, or even survival. He fought because it was right. The instructor raised his hand toward Tom. From this day forward, let it be remembered that an average human has broken every record of this ground. Not through arrogance, but through endurance, strength, mind, spirit, unity, and choice. Let his name be written as proof that no being is truly average. The crowd erupted in cheers. Myra felt her throat tighten, her pride transformed into respect that bordered on awe. She had once laughed at him. She had once called him weak. Now she stood at his side, knowing she had witnessed something that would be told for generations. That evening, as the sun set and the camp grew quiet, Myra found Tom again. He sat at the edge of the field, his gaze on the horizon. She walked up to him slowly, her voice soft. When I first saw you, I thought you were nothing. I thought humans were fragile. But you proved me wrong again and again. You changed the way I see not only you but myself. Tom turned his head toward her. His calm eyes carried no pride, only a steady warmth. I am not special, he said. I only did what I had to do. Any human would have done the same. Myra shook her head. No. Not any human. Not anyone. Only you. For the first time, she saw him give a small smile. It was quiet, almost hidden, but it carried more weight than any victory. As the stars began to shine above, Myra whispered to herself words she would never forget. You call that average human? The galaxy will never believe it. And with that, the legend of Tom began to spread beyond the camp, beyond the trials, beyond even Myra's people. The story of the human who was called average, yet proved greater than any measure, would echo across the stars as a reminder of what humans truly were, never average, always more.